thank you all for coming. I'm Stephanie Cronin. I'm the Executive Director of the Middlesex 3 Coalition. I think most of you guys know the coalition. If you don't, we will follow up with you, let you know more about it, or just check us out on middlesex3.com. Erin and I were kind of going back and forth on whether or not to make this a meeting versus a webinar. And maybe this is the question we should be asking at the end, Erin, is what people do prefer, whether it's a meeting, a webinar. We really started these What's Happening meetings as a way to kind of bring people together and just have a casual conversation. So let me know. But if you do have questions throughout this, please put them into the chat box and we will weave them into the conversation, and our speakers can address them, or we can throw them out to our speakers. And also, you know, we don't have as many opportunities to engage, so please put your contact information into the chat box so people can follow up with you, and we can this is what we've got for engagement, so this is what we're going to use. So we have a full agenda. First, thank you to our speakers and our sponsors for coming and presenting. Oh, can we go back to that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. We have, let me introduce our speakers, and then I'll hand it over to them. From the town of Tyngsborough, Matt Hansen, the town administrator, also on the Middlesex 3 Board of Directors, and Eric Salerno, the Economic Development Director and the Town Planner. And so there's certainly a lot going on in Tyngsborough. I hear a lot of the work you're doing. I read a lot about it. So I look forward to getting into more detail with that. Also, Peter Milano from the Mass Office of Business Development. If you don't know Peter, I highly encourage you to connect with him. He's the guy that knows what's going on at the state. And really, you haven't missed a beat with this pandemic, Peter. You're still everywhere on the phone connecting. So thank you for all your support. And Tom O'Donnell from UMass Lowell, who has about 5 titles at UMass Lowell, including the Senior Director of Innovations, who's going to talk a little bit more about the innovations happening at UMass Lowell from the lab to the real world, and how we're going to keep them in the Middlesex 3 area once you've kind of grown them past capacity as well too. And if you haven't met Bill Jean at Fulcrum Associates, well, you will today, and I encourage you to connect with him. It's great. And I just met with Tima as well too from Fulcrum. So thank you both for joining us. Thank you for sponsoring this event, and I look forward to hearing more of the work that's going on at Fulcrum during this discussion as well too. So thank you all thank you to our speakers and to our sponsor, Fulcrum Associates.
Stephanie, real quick.
Yeah.
You asked the question, meeting versus webinar.
Yeah.
Given that there's 33, 34, I think a meeting could work. Webinar is a lot less personal. Just my opinion.
That was what I was thinking as well too. It just might make a more informal conversation. So I'm good with a meeting as well too. If anybody, you know what, if you're an attendee, you don't want to be part of it, put your video off. But I'd say let's move everybody back over so we can have more of an informal conversation. If that works, I don't think it's that difficult to move people over. So, okay. Yep, we're going to do that. Okay, but with that, Matt, I'm going to hand it back over to you, or I'm going to hand it over to you to hear more about what's going on with the town of Tyngsborough. So thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Glad to be here this morning. And as you mentioned earlier, we have Eric Salerno, our town planner and economic development director, with us here. We do have a brief presentation. I believe Eric is going to share his screen, and you may also have a copy. All right, Eric is sharing his screen now. So I'm going to have Eric actually go through our presentation with our most recent project updates, and I might chime in and add a few additional items here and there. And then I have a few additional high-level economic development related updates at the end of the presentation that I can go through that aren't shown on the PowerPoint. But as of right now, because we have a short time frame here and a lot of people on, I want to just pass it over to Eric to get going. Thank you again for having us, and thank you everyone for joining today to hear a bit more about what's going on in Tyngsborough. Eric, it's all yours.
Just to confirm, I want to make sure that our slides are being shared and not my email inbox.
It's your email right now.
Okay, hang on. Let's see here. We can do this over again. Share screen, PowerPoint slideshow. Let's try that one more time. Is that better?
Yes.
That's better.
All right. So thanks for everybody for coming. It's been a little while since we've been able to provide a more detailed update to Middlesex 3. Obviously, over the last several months, all of our municipalities that have participated in these types of updates have been addressing the challenges associated with keeping business development going and projects going during COVID. Tyngsborough itself has done a pretty outstanding job getting technology set up so that we can continue our public hearings and continue to accept special permit applications and keep business development going. So I'm very, very pleased to have new projects, some of which were introduced, passed, and completed almost entirely during COVID, which is pretty impressive. For those of you that aren't familiar with the shape of Tyngsborough, we are obviously up at the border of New Hampshire. We are split by the Merrimack River, and our major commercial and industrial corridor runs up and down Middlesex Road. For those of you that have been shopping at the Pheasant Lane Mall in Nashua, you were only a couple of steps away from our major retail districts where Tyngsborough hosts the AMC Theater, Bahama Breeze, the Olive Garden, and several other businesses up in the northern portion of town. And for those of you that are in the commercial development space, at the end of our presentation, you'll find that we have some opportunities for you to join those fine businesses as well. Matt and our assistant town administrator, as well as many, many other members of the municipal team here, have been working tirelessly on rejuvenating the town center. We have a couple of images that have been taken recently. Our town center is comprised of our old town hall, our first parish meeting house, obviously our iconic bridge, and several other buildings. In the upper left-hand corner here, you can see some of the landscaping that's been completed next to the first parish meeting house. We have a new footbridge that's been installed that's going to continue to enhance the area as landscaping comes in. You can get another view of it in the lower left. And on the right-hand side, you'll actually see the old town hall, as well as a very old building that has been preserved by a developer that bought a parcel that is sandwiched between our fire station and our old town hall, which is going to be, has already been permitted and approved for a tavern-style restaurant, which I can get to a little bit more of a site plan for you in a minute. But I also want to take this opportunity to give a plug for the 216 Meeting House, which is the placemaking marketing name that's been given to the first parish meeting house. As you can see, pictures look a lot better when you hire a professional photographer than what you're doing with our cell phones. But this lighting here is the pavilion as seen from the other side of the footbridge, looking at the first parish meeting house. And if you were the photographer, right behind you would be the old town hall. As you can see, we have some skilled individuals in our recreation department that help set up our buildings for events as well as weddings. And I invite anybody that is interested in seeing the venue to come visit the First Parish Meeting House on November 1st between 11 and 3, when they'll be hosting a wedding expo and booking event. You can learn a little bit more about it by going to 216 Meeting House on Facebook. Getting more into some of the development projects, what we see here is a bird's eye site plan view of the tavern-style restaurant that I mentioned before. This is the town center and the lower portion of your screen. As you move towards Route 3 along Kendall Road, you'll pass our old town hall. You'd get to the fire station, and as I mentioned, in between the two is a future tavern-style restaurant with a patio. This has been a unique partnership between the town and the developer, where we signed a long-term lease agreement for the parking area in the back of the unit. It also helps enhance some of the incentives or some of the plans that the town has been making to expand public parking in the center of town. So once that project is completed, we can move forward with expanding parking access for people that will be basically attracted to the town center. We've been very excited to help this particular project. There's a new coffee shop open at the Bridgeview Plaza called Mammy Lou's. This business has been opened by family members from Tyngsborough's successful Casadora's restaurant. Some family members were looking to expand their venue offerings. The two of them were very passionate about opening up a coffee shop with a specific type of concept. And it's pretty phenomenal how they've executed on their vision. As you can see here, it is a phenomenally designed interior, and they only just opened, today's 2 days ago. And I'm sorry that I haven't actually had a chance to pop in yet, but I invite everybody to pop in and maybe I'll run into you there. You can learn more about their offerings and keep up with them on Facebook at Mammy Lou's Cafe online. And this was the project that I was mentioning earlier that was essentially conceived of, reviewed, permitted, and completed almost entirely during COVID, which is really impressive. They were essentially self-financed, which helped a lot. I know that our group has had some conversations about the challenges of financing during COVID, but they managed to solve most of those issues. We've also been very happy to have a successful opening right at the very start of COVID for Nature's Remedy, the town's first retail marijuana establishment. This is on the northern portion of town in that retail district. It's actually right next to Olive Garden. Up on the right-hand side of this building, you have Olive Garden. They've been successfully running their business using a call-ahead reservation system. So people place their order. They select the pickup time, they pull into the parking lot and pick the area of the parking lot that they pull into based on how they're going to pay, and then exit the premises with the product. And it's been working quite well.
Eric, I can talk briefly about the revenue just very quickly.
Sure, thanks.
We did receive our first month's excise revenue, the 3% excise, the local option that the town adopted, came in at just under $35,000. And then we have a host agreement for an additional 3% on top of that, 75% of which is going into a road stabilization fund. So in total, we're getting close to $70,000 a month from this business, which, as you can imagine, is over $700,000 a year, split between the excise tax and the host agreement revenue. It actually slightly exceeds the estimates that I put forward at town meeting. And I remember back then, a lot of people just were, it was sort of unbelievable. They didn't believe that you could actually generate that type of revenue, but they're selling over $1 million worth of product per month at this location. And if you were to drive by, you wouldn't really notice. As Eric mentioned, they have the reservation drive-up system. So there's never more than, I'd say, 2 or 3 people waiting in line to get their product. There are a number of cars for staff in the back, but it's very quick in and out because people can't go in and shop. They have to purchase ahead of time. So there's never any large traffic jams or anything like that. It's a very smooth run business when you drive by. If you didn't know what was going on there, you wouldn't even know that it's a cannabis shop, but the revenue has been tremendous.
It's a shame that people can't go in because they really did an outstanding job on their interior. It's pretty spectacular. So I'm looking forward to when people can go in person. As a separate note, I've been trying to read up on the new Cannabis Control Commission's, I guess it's proposed legislation for delivery. That's probably something that would be a great topic for M3 to discuss in the future, especially since we have several towns that are supporting brick and mortar shops. And there's a lot of debate going on about how that new legislation would have an impact on those businesses. Trying to keep on time, we did want to note the completion of the new office space at 352 Middlesex Road. So the last time we gave an update, this project was just getting started. It's been completed. It's another stunning building along Middlesex Road. There is some office space available there. I'm sorry that I don't have the leasing information up on the slide, but you can get in touch with me. I'd be happy to put you in touch with Trahan and Page Associates. Some other things that are happening around our community, at 50 Westford Road, we have some land that has been recently connected to sewer. We have some proposals for a BAPS community and religious center. It's hard to tell the scale on your screen here, but that represents, I believe, over 50 to 55,000 square feet of community center space. It's a very impressive and comprehensive plan that they've proposed, and Tyngsborough is looking forward to hosting them. They've been developing relationships with various departments as we go, and I'd expect a formal proposal over the next month or two. A quick update on the 440 Retail Plaza redevelopment. As you know, the town's been working with Sam Park and Company, who received a tax increment financing package. You know, can't really sugarcoat it. COVID has delayed the project. We were anticipating a lot more construction to be going on this year, but I am happy to say that over the last couple of weeks, communications with his team has picked up, and we're starting to put together the first stages to prepare the redevelopment for the road section, because he wants to relocate the access road to that development plaza. From a zoning bylaw perspective, we held our town meeting on September 26th, also on a Saturday at the football fields on a wet morning. The meeting itself went quite well. It was fairly well attended, and town meeting passed the assisted living and continuing care campus bylaw that helps keep Tyngsborough's bylaws competitive with surrounding communities that have already managed to pass legislation that enables them to develop and support assisted living. We've tried to learn from surrounding communities to incorporate criteria and specific requirements to help ensure that proposals and development is supported by the community and the public, as well as financeable for the industry itself. So a combination of 10% of the units to be designated as affordable. We tried to come up with good combinations for open space and building coverage. And I'd like to point out that we allow assisted living to be developed by itself, and we allow continuing care campuses to be developed, but we don't allow independent living to be developed by itself. So that was an interesting process for the town to go through, and it was a great culmination of effort by the planning board and other team members. Our anticipated location for the first application for assisted living, once the Attorney General approves the bylaw, is along Technology Drive, which is only about I think it's 3/4 of a mile south of the Tyngsborough Town Center.
Eric, because you have that map up, could you just go back for one moment? I wanted to add one additional item. On Monday night, the Board of Selectmen approved the posting of a new public safety building study committee to explore the creation of a new public safety facility. And one of our target locations is directly across the street from that building, next to Notre Dame, that property on the west side of this map, south of that field. Notre Dame has close to 100 acres, and they're looking to sell the town 8 acres potentially for a public safety building. So I've been speaking to their attorney this week, and they want to meet with the Public Safety Building Committee as soon as they are up and running. And they have actually been working with a planning and zoning and construction consultant to see how adding our facility to their site might help unlock some future development potential. So in essence, if we were to put a public safety building on this land along Westford Road, how would that impact their ability to subdivide off some additional lots all along the road? This is very close to exit 34 on Route 3. So in the future, they may be interested in developing a large portion of that property there.
Excellent. I wanted to make sure I saved enough time to cover this slide, since if we were doing this meeting in person, we might have considered going up to the Business Park Drive location. We've been excited to welcome Axenix as an employer to Tyngsborough. Their application for a new 55,000 square foot building at right behind 100 Business Park Drive, which was already 43,000 square feet, was approved several months ago. They just recently completed pouring their foundations, and they expect to have building construction well underway by January. Axenix has been in the advanced metal and plastics manufacturing industry for over 30 years. They're bringing approximately 45 employees to town. And I can't say enough about how impressed I've been with the products that they produce, the skilled technicians that they employ, and the customers that they manage to keep on their list. They serve original equipment manufacturers such as Intel, Fujifilm, Applied Materials, Brooks Automation, and the names go on and on. There's an image in the lower right-hand corner that's a good example of the types of materials that they build. They're essentially experts at creating what's called gas cabinets, which are used extensively in the biomedical and pharmaceutical industries and life sciences industries. So we're excited to have them come actually out of New Hampshire and into Massachusetts. So a great success story there. The property owner, the reason why the location was chosen here is the owner of Xenix owns the property at that's 43,000 square feet at 100 Business Park Drive. Wanted to combine the properties, and Xenix is planning to occupy approximately 25,000 square feet of the building, which means that there's going to be 30,000 square feet available in the new building for lease. They've mentioned that they'd like to keep the subdivisions down to around 10,000 square feet, but they'll go as small as 3,400 square feet. So Tom, if there's any incubator companies that are coming out of Lowell, we might have some great locations for them coming up very soon in an environment where they could be interacting with some great manufacturing expertise. There's also 7,000 square feet currently available at the 100 Business Park Drive building. So if you have immediate needs to move in at less than 10,000 square feet, there is an opportunity there. And Tamposi Nash is representing both properties. You can contact Bill Lewers at the number listed below, or get in touch with me and I'll make sure that I'll put you in touch. This location is fantastic, by the way, because it is right off of exit 35 in Tyngsborough. It goes to the west. It's right off of Route 3. And the views that come off of the back of the new building are pretty spectacular, since there's actually a retention pond and reservoir in the back. I just wanted to briefly mention that the sewer phase 2 has been wrapping up. We have some just very, very final stages of remaining to-do list task items to complete, mostly along the lines of National Grid, before we can call sewer phase 2 completely finished, which runs sewer connections all the way up Middlesex Road, which is the segue essentially into some of the other opportunities that are on the northern portion of our retail commercial district. Keller Williams actually put together a flyer that I modified slightly with some of the information on there. So there's 2 screens to try to get the information across. The site that you see here highlighted in yellow is 406 Middlesex Road. A portion of this parcel was carved off for Nature's Remedy. So right above there, you'll see that's where Olive Garden is. Nature's Remedy is in this top corner, but we have a tremendous amount of prime property available right off of Middlesex Road for commercial industrial development. As Tyngsborough moves forward with the completion of their master plan as well, which we'd expect to be wrapped up completely in late winter, my office is going to be transitioning into a comprehensive zoning review project where I'm looking for development partners who might be very close or on the fence with regards to developing in the northern portion of town to evaluate language for mixed use development to ensure that we're trying to meet the needs and demands of the market. What you're looking at here, we've got several properties. There's actually up to 109 acres available, all contiguous, across 2 property owners up here. While Keller Williams took some liberties with regards to proposing some potential uses along Locust Avenue and Middlesex, this concept combines, a grocery concept, office use, as well as some high density housing. I just need to note that high density housing or housing in these particular zones is not currently permittable yet. But this is the type of mixed use development that we would like to adjust our zoning bylaws to try to accommodate and connect more dense housing development with commercial and retail space and investment. Duncan Chapman and Chris Hannon have both been representing the property owners in a rare circumstance where they're actually representing both property owners in case there's an opportunity for an investor that wants a combination of the parcels. All right, Stephanie, I'd like to mention that I did start a timer and I have 26 seconds left.
You are good. Thank you, guys. I'm sure you could talk a lot more. There's a lot going on in Tyngsborough. So, and maybe, I know we're gonna have some time for, hopefully we'll have time for Q&A at the end. But perhaps you guys can also put up your, Eric, you can put your email information there. So if people have questions, they can also contact you directly as well too. That might be a good way to do it. And I'm just right next door. So I have a keen interest in what's going on in Tyngsborough, and I took a a screenshot of the coffee shop, because I will probably be seeing you there at some point. That looked good.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, let me know if you're coming into town. I'd love to meet you there.
I'm always in town.
Mhm.
So that's a lot of great things going on. Thank you both for the updates, and I look forward to hearing more as well too. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Peter Milano over at the Mass Office of Business Development. Speaking of a lot going on, and I know you've got a lot of news, a lot of things going on at the state, Peter. Can you
I
update
think
us?
I'll give back more than 26 seconds just for the record. So I chose not to use a PowerPoint. We have a new one. It's about 22 pages, and I have fatigue from PowerPoint and from Zoom calls. So I'm going to just I'm going to chat, and I'll leave a lot open for questions at the end. But today's in the world of COVID recovery, today will be an important day for economic development, for recovery in general. And I'm really bound by an embargo, if you will. So I'm going to really touch around the edges of what's going to be announced by the governor in 90 minutes. So forgive me if I sound evasive, which I will be. But the governor's COVID relief plan will be announced at the State House at 12 o'clock today. And a lot of pieces of it will have to do with basic human needs like housing and eviction and food security. But there's a good chunk that's going to work with businesses, and in particular, small businesses. Much of the money will be funneled to the Massachusetts Growth Capital Club, which I actually chair the board of. And businesses that we're really going to try to focus on businesses that were unable to receive PPP. We heard the message loud and clear. The federal government put about $14 billion in PPP money into Massachusetts, but that didn't cover all of our businesses. And what we heard was, that was great for the companies that were able to apply and receive a payroll protection program loan. It was a lifesaver. It was a game changer in most cases. But for the companies that were left standing without that ability, what could we do for them? And it wasn't a lot, quite frankly. It was very difficult. So moving forward to today, there'll be about just under $51 million announced for small businesses in two categories: 5 or less employees and 50 or less employees. And we're really going to concentrate on businesses that have been underserved, if you will, or traditionally that have had a harder time accessing capital. So it'll be women-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses, Black and brown, businesses in gateway cities, or where lenders have had a harder time, if you will, finding bankable companies. And this is all based on feedback that we've gotten over the last couple of months. State doesn't make this up. We've had listening sessions. We've had an economic development working team out there led by the Lieutenant Governor and Secretary Mike Keneally. So much of what we're going to be announcing today, and I shouldn't say we, it'll be the governor with our secretary, my boss, Mike Keneally. There'll be a substantial chunk of monies for worker training, for and you probably all heard it. There's been $171 million for rent assistance already announced. But today is going to be for businesses, and some of the businesses that will not be eligible. Let's start there, because generally that's the first question that I receive. Businesses that are not going to be eligible for this new money today are businesses that receive PPP, not-for-profits, real estate rental or sales businesses, businesses owned by persons under 18 years of age, businesses that are chains, liquor stores, weapons or firearms dealers, lobbyists, and cannabis-related businesses. That's the real highlights of who is not eligible. Now, I really didn't want to bury the lead, so I started there. And let me say that the Mass Office of Business Development has been working, myself and my team, we've got 10 people plus myself, there's 11 of us. 5 of us work on, 5 of my team plus myself work on client interfacing. 5 of my team plus myself work on administrative items. So many things that you wouldn't expect to flow through economic development, but when I say it to you, you'd be like, oh, that makes sense. You know, we fund things that traditionally you don't really think too much about, but the Small Business Development Center needs a state and federal match that comes through our group. We have to work with them on their contracting. The zoos, you know, there's a substantial amount of cultural and tourists, economic development activity that comes through there. The 2 Massachusetts zoos are funded and facilitated through the Mass Office of Business Development. And they were a very nervous group. It's not like they can, like any other company, just close their doors. The vets need to go to work. The vet techs need to go to work. The animals need to eat. So that was something that we worked with them to keep them up and running, even if it was on a smaller crew. But the 2 zoos are funded through the Mass Office of Business Development and many others. So we have 5 administrative folks that work through our group. And in the beginning, it was really about reopening. We worked with companies, we worked with groups, we worked with Middlesex 3 to field questions. You know, it was really about who's essential, who's not essential, how do we go about becoming essential, how do we move from phase 1 to phase 2 to phase 3, step 2, which is where we are now, which municipality is red, yellow, gray. I think you've all heard this. You guys know the story. I'm not going to beleaguer the point, but we've got more than 60 plus communities that are in the red right now. Schools are struggling. This all is something that my team interacts with. We are spread out geographically across the state. We've got offices in Springfield, Worcester, Quincy, Fall River, Salem, and naturally Boston. So we now are shifting from reopening to recovery. We know that people need to work in order for us to get out of this. It's been a challenge. It's been a challenge. I think all of you on the screen know just how much so. We've been fortunate. Most of the folks on this screen, myself included, have been working, but not everybody's that fortunate. We just ticked under 10% unemployment, which is a crazy number to be celebrating, but that's where we are as a state. We just ticked under 10% unemployment rate. So we know we have a lot of work to do. We will do the work. We have people, we have a process, and we have a plan. And as of today, we will be implementing money. This money came from the CARES Act, by the way. So this money will be placed on the street quickly. As of today, the spending can start immediately. The only thing that will hold it up is building the systems to implement spending. Now, how are we going to do that? Good question. We've been working behind the scenes for 3 weeks now, maybe 4 weeks, meetings close to every day to figure out a system, because we're going to get a lot of applications. We're going to get a lot of interest. The Massachusetts Growth Capital Club previously had about a less than $10 million fund, you know, plus or minus, it would swing. And now it's going to have about $100 million worth of new money when you figure in some federal money, some state money, and some of this new money. So we've built a system there, and we've built we've built some capabilities, and we're going to funnel the money out to what we call TA providers, technical assistance providers. They're on the ground already, spread out across the Commonwealth. Now, in this area, there's a couple that are already in the queue, which is Community Teamwork in Lowell, E4All, Merrimack Valley Small Business Center. These, they're the ones that sort of rise up, and I know that they're already in our queue. They will apply for more allocation. But there's others, and they don't have to geographically stay within their regions. There's others that can actually lend. We don't ask them to cover a specific region, but the team in Lowell has done a very good job. In fact, when we had our announcement, last year for all of these providers. They're called CDFIs, Community Development Finance Institutions. We did it in Lowell with the Lieutenant Governor. This was pre-COVID, we thought the life, we thought everything was normal, if you will, but that's where we were making our announcements. Everything was happy. Lowell got a very healthy allocation of funds to lend, and that's how we're going to move forward. So I'm going to really pull up a bit. There's a lot of nuance to what's going to be announced today, but the short of it is there will be money to spend on worker development, worker training, and businesses. Businesses can apply. It's important to note, these will be grants. These will not be loans. So companies can come and receive up to $25,000 for the smaller piece of it, that's 5 people or less, and up to $75,000 for the larger portion of it. So these are probably going to be company savers. And we know that, and we're very sensitive to this, and we're looking forward to the business communities across the Commonwealth, and we're looking forward to working with them. And we'll rely on groups like the Middlesex 3 to assist us in that mission. So I'm going to pull up substantially short, Stephanie, and I'll be available for questions afterwards.
I appreciate that, Peter. And this is great. It's a good amount of information. I know we have a number of communities as well as businesses that are going to be looking for the details. I know Erin put a link to some of the details already in the chat, and as we get additional information, we can send it out to the Middlesex 3 company. So thank you for that overview. I didn't realize you were the chair of the mass growth. So that you're everywhere. I think your area continues to expand, but you're always a phone call away. So we appreciate just your accessibility, and Secretary Keneally too does these weekly or every other week events to connect to the business community. So he certainly has been listening to the needs in the business community. So thank you for that. So speaking of business community and working with the businesses, I'm going to turn it over now to Tom O'Donnell, who's also on my board of directors. And Tom, I know you do a lot with innovation at UMass Lowell, and maybe you can give us a little overview of what you guys are working on and how to bring the businesses, keep them in the region too.
Sure. Thank you, Stephanie. And just a shout out to you and your team for all the great work, keeping us all together and focusing on a regional perspective, because I think when we talk about some of the things I'm going to touch on today, which essentially speak to one of the core elements of the Massachusetts economy, which is innovation, it's really important that we treat that more regionally as opposed to try to do it individually, municipalities or organizations like UMass Lowell. So thank you once again to you and your team. It was really good to hear several folks on the call, on the meeting today, speak to some of the things that we're actually focusing on, which is to support and nurture the commercialization of emerging technologies so that they can lead to companies forming, growing, and then hopefully expanding and scaling up and becoming vibrant and active businesses in our region overall. And so when we think about that and we look at that more broadly, traditionally, and a lot of that is already going on in the region. But since probably before the last 5, 6, 8 years, a lot of those innovators, a lot of those entrepreneurs figured that they needed to point their compass down into Boston and Cambridge, because that's where the critical mass was. What we've been trying to work on at UMass Lowell, but also with our partners at Middlesex Community College, with Middlesex 3, with others, is to try to focus and nurture an innovation ecosystem here in the region, to help entrepreneurs to grow their companies, to help new technologies come out of the labs and find traction in the economy. And all those things together that will nurture and support that innovation ecosystem here in the region. So I'm going to touch on 2 things to give you some insights on that. First piece is taking technologies coming out of the labs at UMass Lowell trying to find a way to get those technologies out into the real world. If you don't know, as of this past year, the university, under the leadership of Julie Chen, our Vice Chancellor of Innovation and Research, is doing about $100 million in research annually. What does that mean? It means that there's both fundamental and applied research in areas touching on cybersecurity, nano manufacturing, printed and flexible electronics, space technologies, robotics, energy, advanced materials and textiles, and things around ancillary areas, business operations, terrorism, and security studies. All of those are areas where new ideas are being created and assessed as to whether they can turn into real ventures and companies that can make a go of addressing and solving problems in the marketplace. I'm going to touch on one program specifically here on campus that's focused on helping those researchers to look at their inventions, look at their research, and ask the question, so what? So what is what I'm doing compelling, and does it address a real problem in a new and interesting way that's differentiated from others who are already trying to solve that problem in the market? And if you haven't heard of a program called I-Corps, Innovation Corps, it's like the Marine Corps, spelled C-O-R-P-S. It's a program that was initially sponsored by the National Science Foundation and has grown beyond that, and it's been adopted by the NIH, the DOE, the DOD, and other government agencies who are, in many ways, the biggest funders of that research going on in the labs. And they figured out about 10 years ago and said, hey, we're investing all this money in this research, and it's leading to patents and research papers, but we want more. We want that research to find its way into the market. So they put it on universities like UMass Lowell to nurture and support that pathway from invention to real impact in society overall. So I'll give you one example. We have a researcher here on campus who figured out that mushrooms, a certain type of mushroom, has a characteristic in that mushroom material that could address a need in the creation of battery technologies, specifically flow batteries. And I'm not going to go into that, but he proved at the lab bench scale that it could demonstrate that it could substitute for existing electrolytes in those flow batteries. So what did he do? He proved that that could be done at the bench scale. Next question was, okay, so what? Got some seed funding through the seed stage of the I-Corps program to ask that very question and essentially get out of the lab, get out of the building, and talk to real people, potential customers, industry experts, consultants, folks in the industry who understood that landscape, because there are so many researchers who never get out of the lab. And that's the intent of that I-Corps program, to get them out there and move them forward in that path to hopefully eventually get to a new venture and something that could potentially scale up and become a successful business. Now, the reality is very few of them will ever get to that scale, but our job in supporting them is to have a portfolio of those early stage potential ventures, support them through that path, and if a handful of them get to that early stage that scale up stage and then can grow. That's why Massachusetts is a leading innovation economy, because that's what's been happening in Boston and Cambridge for the last 20, 30 years and beyond. So we're trying to make that happen here in the Merrimack Valley. And as a leading research institute, UMass Lowell, there's an enormous amount of opportunity. And the ask to all of you is to help us do that, because all of you understand the problems in the industry, could help mentor, and advise those early stage potential entrepreneurs and help them understand if what they're doing is compelling and if there's a pathway to a venture that could address that problem in the market and potentially scale up. And if that happens, they're first probably going to house themselves in our incubators here on campus, but eventually move out to space in the region. So talking to folks in Westford, talking to folks in Tyngsborough and beyond, that's absolutely part of the plan. The earlier all of you become part of that discussion, the more likely they're going to trust and want to engage and then work with all of you down the road. So the invitation, jump on in. The water's fine. We'd love to work with you. The second piece in this is connecting early stage companies in the region that were not formed out of research from the campus. Early stage companies and entrepreneurs, but also established companies and larger companies that want to come in, leverage our resources, and help them basically grow, expand, thrive. And in most cases, it's in that area of innovation, of trying to figure out what are those new initiatives, those new programs. And Ira and his team are constantly thinking about those things. And they are a strategic partner with us here at UMass Lowell. So Ira, thank you to you and your team. You guys are doing amazing things. So thank you. So what does that mean? It means for an early stage company coming on in, leveraging space, access to equipment that in many cases they can't afford, connecting to and partnering with our researchers to help them figure out and expand what they're doing. And in many cases, look to additional grants to help them fund that research, state level grants, federal level grants, and others. And if they're working with a research institute like UMass Lowell, it makes that ask to those granting agencies that much more compelling. And it's also just potentially working with our students as interns. Our students are doing some phenomenal work and can help our partners to innovate and accelerate what they're doing. An interesting thing is the state actually funds interns to work with those companies. So in many cases, low or no funds are required from those startups to actually get those interns in-house. So again, what we're talking about is the capabilities and the resources here on campus. And I just want to give a shout out to two of my colleagues who are on the call, Lisa Armstrong and Stephanie Guyot, who are our associate directors at the Lisa, Innovation Hub here in Lowell, Stephanie, the Innovation Hub up in Haverhill, and they're tasked every day to wake up and think about how do we help, support, nurture, and help the startups in our incubator to navigate that path and eventually graduate and move on. And the last thing I want to talk on, one success story. Early entrepreneur, Molly Romani, who joined us in the early stage here at the Innovation Hub in Lowell and leveraged just a ton of stuff to help commercialize his technology, which was essentially an orthotic rehabilitative device for injured horses, primarily race horses. So a racehorse gets injured down at the ankle level. In most cases, the solution, um, shamefully, is to put the horse down. This device allowed vets and others to work with these injured horses in a much more staged way. Here at the Innovation Hub, leveraged all the resources. We helped them get access to equipment, advisors, mentors, funding, both at the city level and university funds. They get some additional grants, essentially moved beyond what we could support them on, and then graduated and moved to space here in Lowell at the Waterlets and Mills, and went from an office and a couple of desks to about 5,000 square feet of space, and they're continuing to grow and expand. And that's just one example. We have others. We invite you to reach out and talk to us. But with that, the invitation to all of us is to, again, think how we can approach this regionally. And there are many ways. And I'm going to put one example in the chat of something that Somerville did. They created what they called an urban lab. And they invited startups to come in and work with them to demonstrate and prove that their early technologies were appropriate, were addressing needs that the city had. Why is that important? Well, it proves that Somerville is a forward-thinking and innovative municipality, but it also gives those startups access to early and lead customers to help them prove that their stuff works. That is so critically important to those early stage companies. I would suggest here in the Merrimack Valley, we are all part of those early stage customers that these startups would love to talk to and help understand whether or not their stuff is meaningful. And I've had this conversation already with Christine McCall here in Lowell, and early stage, but just want to plant that seed. We potentially could do that at a regional level. And with that,
So,
I'll leave it.
no, thank you, Tom. I've got a bunch of questions that I want to follow up on, but I'm wondering, can you stick around till the end? Because I want to make certain, I know a number of people have a hard stop at 11, I have to jump off. But I want to make certain I bring Fulcrum Associates into the conversation. So can I follow up with some questions after, at the end? Because you raised a bunch of questions. But one thing I will ask though before that is if you and your associates can put your contact information into the chat so that if people do have to jump off, they can follow up with you individually as well. So if everybody can, that would be great. But with that, and we'll get back to Q&A. And if anyone has questions, throw them into the chat as well too. But I want to bring Bill and Tima into the conversation as well too. And I just met Tima today, and I look forward to meeting you or talking with you more. I've known Bill for a while. Wait, am I on here still? What are we doing? Aaron? Okay.
I'm just sharing a presentation.
No, sorry, you just got me confused. Doesn't take much. So I've known Bill for a while. He's been pretty active, very active with Middlesex 3. So I look forward to this presentation as well too. I want to hear more of what Fulcrum's been doing and what you can be doing in the Middlesex 3 area. So Bill, I'm going to hand it over to you guys.
Thank you, Stephanie. And I will try to be as brief as possible. Our goal here is just to try to build on our exposure in the Middlesex 3 corridor and get people to understand who we are and what we do. And I want to echo Tom's sentiment. I appreciate what Middlesex 3 is doing, bringing and continuing these forums and bringing people together and making connections. It's critical for businesses to thrive in this environment, and I appreciate all the work that you, Aaron, and your staff are doing to keep this going, and we appreciate the opportunity to sponsor and make sure it continues. So real quick, Aaron, I guess you have control of our slides. Fulcrum is a construction management firm. We're located just north of the Massachusetts border in Amherst, New Hampshire. We do a lot of our work throughout the state of New Hampshire, southern New Hampshire, northern Massachusetts, all the way into Maine and east and west. But just to give you a brief timeline, we've been in business since 1989 with the same principal owner, Jeffrey Luter. He started the company with a partner. He brought his partner out in 2007 and is now the sole principal. In the early days, you know, we were doing all sorts of smaller construction projects, and then there was some downturn in economy in the 90s, and Jeff and Matt started doing some bank build-out work and discovered the collaborative construction management approach, and subsequently most of our systems of implementing construction services have been based on construction management delivery since then. This gives you a little bit of a brief timeline that shows some of our growth. We have a very diverse portfolio of work, medical, educational, multifamily housing, technology, you know, life sciences, all of the sectors. We've grown from, you know, we can do work within $100,000 range, and currently we're involved with a project for BAE Systems in Manchester that's in excess of 100 million. So we're very scalable. We're a collaborative company, again, family owned. Jeff remains involved in pretty much every project that we get exposure to, and we look forward to showing you a little bit more of our work here and some of our capabilities. Next slide, Aaron, is just going to briefly go through some of our work that we've done recently. This is Limo Construction. They're a cladding system manufacturer, essentially. They built a new corporate headquarters. They do a lot of work in the Metro Boston and metro areas, and they elected us to build their manufacturing facility. And you can see that they display a lot of their work on their building. Again, we'll fly through these in respective times. So the next one is Portsmouth Regional Hospital. They built a freestanding emergency room project in Dover, New Hampshire. Again, fully licensed facility, freestanding, can handle level 1 trauma all the way through. They have imaging and ORs right in on staff there. So one of our more recent medical projects. Next one, Aaron, is again, you know, the necessity for housing has driven the boom for multi-family rental units. We've not been void of that. We've got a project going in Salem, Massachusetts right now, Halstead and Salem. We've built this project in Salisbury with Tidewater, 100 and almost 200 units. I take that back, in 4 buildings over there in Salisbury. Very successful project that's continually 100% occupied. So we do have multifamily. Again, next slide's fine, Aaron. The manufacturing facility, some of you may be familiar with Hitchner Manufacturing up in New Hampshire. We've helped them enhance their corporate facility. We did a large addition for their corporate headquarters and converted some of their manufacturing processes, robotics manufacturing, some of their labs and so on and so forth at their facility there in New Hampshire. As I mentioned, we're continuing to do a lot of work with BAE Systems, which is another one of our manufacturing partners here in New Hampshire. Next slide's fine. Building on our medical experience again, we did the surgery center at Greater Nashua. It's 3 ORs. It's affiliated with Southern New Hampshire Medical Systems, who we've been doing, or Southern New Hampshire Health Systems, who we've been doing work with for the past 10 years. Tyngsborough was a target pre-COVID for one of their expansions for family practices, and we may still need to revisit that discussion. We did a search for some land in Tyngsborough, and hopefully we'll be able to renew that search once things get a little more stabilized. But So you can see we've done a lot of work in the medical industry. Life sciences is another one. I didn't want to encumber too many slides here, but all of this is built on, we love to get into projects early on. We believe we bring some of our best value to the process when we can engage and collaborate with end users, designers, and the team to help evolve a project that's going to meet the goals and needs of the end user and most importantly, the business aspect and the financial component to it. So that's kind of where our core values come in. Next slide, Aaron, is if you just keep clicking in, we want to have an exceptional satisfied client at the end of the day, a job that we're proud to have our name on, and we are very firm on fair and equitable treatment of all members and stakeholders to a project, and we only look for a fair profit after we fulfill those three core values. So contact information, I know Aaron's going to share this with you. I wanted to introduce Tima, is new to our Fulcrum team. We brought her on board 4 months ago, and she's going to be doing a lot. She lives in the Metro Boston market or area and is going to be doing a lot of work up in the Northern Mass market. So I wanted to make sure she gets a firm introduction to M3 and appreciate the opportunity. We'll be seeing more of you. As I understand, we've got another sponsorship for a couple more series going forward. But Tima, if we could take 2 minutes for her to just say hi, I greatly appreciate it. And thank you so much for your time. We'll hang on and be around if there's any questions you have for us directly.
Thank you. I know that it's 11:02, so just to be respectful of folks' time, yes, you'll be seeing my face certainly more involved in the coming months and years. And so always here as a resource to be able to help you, especially if your clients are maybe looking for cost for construction per square foot. Those are numbers that we can help you run. So that's all I'm going to say for now. Thank you so much.
Again, thank you for the opportunity to present today.
Stephanie, you're muted.
Always happens, sorry. Thank you for the information, and we will share that with the group as well as the other the information from Tyngsborough as well. We'll coordinate with you, Eric. But team, it's great to meet you. Bill, it's great to see you, and I look forward to continuing this discussion and getting some more of those getting some of those projects in the Middlesex 3 area as well too. So we look forward to working with you over time. I know we're over our time as well too, but for people who have stayed on, if you have to jump off, certainly jump off. We respect that and we appreciate your time. I did want to follow up with Tom as well too with some of the questions, because you mentioned, first of all, Tom, I do have to, I find it interesting every time I hear about some great things going on at UMass Lowell, the name Julie Chen seems to be associated with that as well too. So she's certainly involved with
Julie is phenomenal, and quite frankly has her hand in so many. I don't know how the hell she does it, because she's involved in everything and just does a terrific job. So yeah, definitely we're fortunate to have her, and stay tuned. Some more stuff to come, specifically in the area of advanced manufacturing as well, which is a very strategic initiative for the Merrimack Valley overall.
Interesting. You get me curious. And you also mentioned getting involved in terms of mentors and advisors, and really also how to keep people in the area as well too. What do you think? What would you recommend in terms of steps on how people can be involved?
That's a longer conversation, but ultimately it's for us to keep the discussion going here, but to create essentially another discussion group. And as Tom Barry mentioned, we've already had chats there, discussion starting to grow with Eric and his team up in Tyngsborough. And I would suggest in all of the towns and cities, obviously working with Christine, Tom Lamond, Maria here in the city, who've been phenomenal partners with us, not only at the university, but with the Innovation Hub. Just be engaged. So we can create a forum to do that, whether it be an email list, whether it be sending out updates on a regular basis, making people aware of opportunities as they come up. But go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, maybe that's also part for our workforce development subcommittee. We should have that as one of our to-dos, the goals on that committee. And we could put on the agenda for next meeting, if that sounds like a starting point.
Sure.
I'm going to assume that Jessica from Hanscom may want to be involved as well too, because I know, Jessica, your role is really to be working more with the universities as well too.
Absolutely, Stephanie. In fact, we're talking with Tom and bringing him in to be more involved with some of Hanscom leadership, and love to continue those discussions. I know our two primary program offices on the installation, our digital office and our C3INN, our comms folks, have both recently, within the last year, established innovation director roles and have hired folks into those roles. It'd be great to see maybe possibly getting them connected with Tom and his team. I think that there could be some good synergy there.
Jessica, thank you, and good seeing you again. Let me just touch on that, okay? And I don't want to be a wet blanket, but innovation, if it's real innovation and it's kind of pushing the envelope, it is not something, and I say this all the time, you put the coin in the slot machine, pull the lever, and expect the money to come flowing. It's risky. Not every investment's is gonna lead to something, but if you have a compelling portfolio of initiatives and approach that in a way that's compelling and intelligent and intentional, there will be winners. And those winners will then get additional attention and essentially get to that point where they can scale and grow and expand and become anchors here in the region. So I just want to caution, if we come into it with a mindset that it's a short-term gain from an innovation standpoint, that may not be the right mindset.
No, absolutely. I completely understand. I think as a service, and especially with our new Chief of Staff of the Air Force, I think we're realizing there's a need for a culture shift. It's something we've been working on. It's something that we're continuing to press with, because the way we traditionally do things and the approaches that we've taken in the past with technology and how things are changing need some reshifting, and some of the things that we've been doing in recent years with Mass Challenge in Boston and others are things we want to continue to grow and pursue more new and different things. So I completely understand and appreciate what you're saying.
No, Jessica, you and your team at Hanscom are doing all the right stuff. So kudos.
Thank you.
Great. So I'm trying to read the room here. I know we're over time. I don't want to end the conversation if people want to put something forward as well too, but I don't want to continue it, especially since we're over time. So if anybody wants to add to the conversation, please do. I'll pause for a second.
Tom, this is Tom Barry. Just a very general question, and there may be no answer to this, but if you have a typical entrepreneur graduates, what is that person looking for in terms of space, equipment, help? Whatever you can tell us.
So there's no one right answer.
That's what I figured.
But I will tell you that the most important thing is that in that path from idea to whatever, the more that all of us can engage and develop relationships and create a community of support around that entrepreneur and their venture, it makes it that much more difficult for them to move outside the region, right?
Okay.
Because they want to maintain access to the relationships they have, maintain access to the equipment resources, either at the university or in some of the labs at corporations who might be partnering with them. They want to stay close to those early customers. They want to stay close to funding sources and other things. So I guess my point in saying that is the earlier you engage with these startups, develop those relationships, and understand as they're going through that path what their needs are. They may not even know what their needs are per se, but working together, in many cases, it's more space to grow and expand, and access to additional funding, and to maintain those relationships that they've established and access to that equipment, which in many cases costs a boatload of money. So mass spectrometers, material characterization devices, testing, nanofabrication gear, go down the list that they can get access to pennies on the dollar here at the university.
Okay.
Well, not pennies on the dollar, but at significantly reduced rates.
So even after they graduate, they can go back to UMass Lowell. I mean, to the iHub.
We treat
use
them
the equipment.
as part of the family.
Okay.
They're always in the family.
Bruce Rosenberg from Westford EDC.
Hey, Bruce, good to see you again.
Yes. Question, having attended yesterday one of Stephanie's other panel discussions, is there a relationship, formal or otherwise, between UMass iHub and the Northeastern Innovation Campus in Burlington? Obviously, you're very much in similar spaces.
Absolutely. I mean, we tie in. There are research collaborations between the universities. We work together on various initiatives, but in many cases, we have very similar capabilities. And whether it be space, equipment, access to research collaborations, faculty expertise. So yeah, there's a lot of similarities, but opportunities to work together as well.
Excellent.
Great, great. Well, I think we'll leave it at this point. And I know there's been a lot of contact information sharing, so please follow up if, and I think we can save the chat box and send it out to everybody as well too. So with that, I will leave it with another thank you to our speakers, Tom, Eric, Bill, Tima, Peter, Matt. Thank you guys. Thank you to Fulcrum Associates for sponsoring us today. And we have upcoming events too. We'll send you all the information with upcoming events, and hopefully we'll see you in the future. But it was great to see everybody, and have a great day. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Take care, guys.